Hey everybody, this is going to be lesson 2. All right, now you're coming to me after having watched lesson 1. And in lesson 1, I showed you all the different ways that you can find deals on the internet. Now you can sit there by yourself and start to use all those tips and techniques and start to have brokers contacting you. But if you're new in the business, one of the biggest fears that people have are, what happens when the brokers start to call? What do I say? And you wouldn't believe how many people stop right there because they're afraid to talk to the brokers. Let me tell you something. If the brokers don't sell anything, they don't get paid. So they are just as anxious as you are to get a deal done. So just always realize that, and I'm going to give you some other rules and tips on how to deal with brokers throughout this particular lesson. Now this is, once again, this is going to be another long lesson, all right? I'm going to throw so much information at you, but by the end, I'm going to give you action steps, and there'll be templates that you can use so that when you start to get the phone calls from the brokers, you'll know exactly what to say. You're going to make mistakes, I'll tell you that right now. But once you get through those mistakes and you learn from them, you won't make any more mistakes, and it'll be second nature to you. So you will be able to find deals on the internet, and you'll be able to speak intelligently to the brokers, and you'll sound like a pro. And that's the key here. All right, so that is going to be what's happening here. Now, if you remember, the name of this lesson was Understanding the Different Property Types. But the real subtitle to this lesson should be How to Craft Your Elevator Speech. And that's what you're going to use when the brokers call you. You're going to have that elevator speech ready to go, and it's going to be your elevator speech, not mine. You're going to hear my elevator speech, and you're going to understand why I say those things, but we're going to really put together exactly what your elevator speech is going to be. So let's think about this from a chronological standpoint. Last month, you started to put into place all the tips as to how to get deals in the door. And all of a sudden, brokers are now calling you. And the first question they're going to ask you is, what are you looking for? Well, the way to answer that question is, first, you have to go in your mind down a checklist. And once you figure out and check all the boxes, you'll know exactly where you need to be and what you need to say. So the first thing you need to understand is, who are you? In this phone call from the broker, what role are you playing? Now just think about it. The beautiful thing about the multifamily business and being in the real estate business in general is that you've got all different ways that you can make money. And when I ask the question, who are you? What I'm actually asking is, are you a bird dogger? Are you a wholesaler? Are you a syndicator? Are you an owner-operator? All of those particular hats will answer the question differently when the broker asks you, who are you? So think about the things that you must say to the broker, but more importantly, think of the things that you shouldn't say to the broker. Make sure you never say certain things to the broker because it'll instantly destroy your credibility. Just think about what some of those things are. First thing I would never say to a broker is, I'm looking for no money down deals. Just don't say that. That screams that you're broke. You don't want to let the broker know you don't have any money. That's none of his business. How much money does the broker have? Well, I don't know, but he's not going to tell you. So don't tell the broker you don't have any money. Don't ask for no money down deals. Now, the second thing I'd never say to a broker is, I syndicate my deals. Well, that may sound good to you, but let me tell you something. When a broker hears it, it's just code for, I have no money. Or it means that the guy will get the deal under contract with you, but then if your syndication doesn't work out and you can't pull the money together, he loses that deal. I had a client on the phone the other day who made the mistake of putting that information on his web page. And the broker went on his web page, saw it, and said, I don't want to do business with you because I only deal with people who have money that they can bring to the table. All right, fine. Don't give the broker that information. He doesn't need to know, all right? Here's another thing that you should never say to a broker. I've never done a deal before. Oh, for crying out loud, please don't ever say that. It's none of his business. You're putting together an investor group. The investors probably have done deals. So there you have it. Through the transitive theory of doing deals, your group has done deals. So don't tell the broker that you've never done deals before. So let me give you the things that you should say to the broker as almost the alternative to what I just said not to say. So one of the things that you want to say to a broker is, instead of saying, I'm looking for no money down deals, don't say that. What you want to say in the alternative is the seller willing to get creative? Okay? Think about that for a second. That's actually code for, is the seller willing to get creative in the offer? Can we come up with some type of seller financing? But you don't say it in the words like, I'm looking for no money down deals. You say like, is the seller willing to get creative? Period. That's all you got to say. All right. Another thing that you want to say is, I work with a team of investors. That's the transitive comment for I'm a syndicator. But when you say I work with a team of investors, it just sounds like you've got a whole team behind you and you've got a whole group ready to go out there and find the right deal. And that's what you say to the broker. He says, what type of deals are you looking for? I'm looking for deals that make sense. And we'll get more into that in a moment, but you don't want to limit yourself when you ask those types of questions. Let me give you some more, other examples. What you want to say is, I work with a group of apartment investors looking to expand in this particular marketplace. Ooh, you're looking to come into our marketplace. Great. I want to be the one that works with your group. Let's do business together. So those are the types of things that you want to say to the brokers so that they look at you differently. You come across looking stronger. Hey, they don't need to know that this is your first deal. They don't need to know that you don't have any money. It's none of their business. They want to you need to give them the information that they need in order to move on to the next step. One of the things when I go out and teach seminars, one of the things that I say is that, hey, you are biased. You are. You come to the table with a certain level of biasness against yourself. You come to the table thinking, I can't do this. Oh, I'm not qualified to do this. Oh, this is too hard for me to do. You've just set up roadblocks for yourself that just don't need to be there. You're biased against yourself. Drop those biases. Just look at yourself. You've got a clean slate. You are now starting a new business, okay? And you're going to start this new business where you get to describe exactly who you are and what you're looking to do. Nobody knows who you are or what you've done in the past, all right? And that's perfect. So let's write the elevator speech the right way so that it describes exactly who you are and who you are looking to be in this new role as the business owner. All right, so that's the beautiful thing of where we are in this whole structure. You're dealing with people that don't know anything about you, and you get to write the script. That's beautiful. Okay, so let's start going through the different types of who you are people. First off, they're the bird doggers. Now think about who the bird doggers are. You've got to think about who are the customers for the bird doggers. The customers for the bird doggers are those people that are going to buy the information from the bird dogger and use it to purchase a property. And the only way the bird dogger is going to get paid is if that user of the information can close on the deal. So the first thing the bird dogger has to do, and this is what we're going to do in the templates, is you are going to have to qualify your customer. And we're going to give you a list of questions that you have to ask every potential bird dog customer. Can you write an earnest money check? What markets are you looking for? What type of deals have you done in the past? I mean, these types of real vetting questions so that you know whether you've got a real player or not. The worst thing you could do is get that great bit of information on a hot lead and then turn it over to people who you thought were customers, only to find out these guys couldn't close a barn door if they were tied to it in a windstorm. That's not who you want to be working with. So you want to make sure you ask the tough questions early on as a bird dogger to make sure that your customers can buy those properties. Now, once you find out that they're vetted and they're qualified, then you find out exactly what they're looking for, and then you turn to the brokers, and when the broker calls and says, what are you looking for? You've got it right there. You know the answer. So that's how a bird dogger will work, and we'll walk you through the templates that are attached to this video so that you can answer those questions correctly and build up your bird dog database of customers. Now, the next type of person are the wholesalers. Now, the wholesalers are different than the bird doggers because they take on risk and they have to perform. And the risk that they take on is in the form of having to write an earnest money deposit check to bind the contract. A bird dogger doesn't have to do that. A wholesaler does. So because he's taking on more risk, you can expect the wholesaler to make more money. But the wholesaler still has to sell that contract. They have to be able to turn around to their list of buyers and sell that particular contract. So once again, just like with the bird dogger, they have to vet their customers. They have to be able to go out there and make sure that those people who they are going to turn around and sell that contract to can perform on the back end. All right, so that's the deal with a wholesaler. Now, if you're a syndicator, think about who your customers are. With a syndication deal, you've got to get the deal under contract. You will have had to negotiate it. And then you've got to go get the money in the door to put the two deals together. Put the money with the deal, and you keep a little piece of the action. All right? So with a syndication deal, it's very important that you've already had the conversation with your investors to find out what they're looking for. If you're on the market looking for D-class war zone properties, but your investors want nothing but A-class properties, you're never going to be able to syndicate a deal. So the thing you want to do is speak to those cash investors, speak to those people who are looking to invest in your deal, and then make sure that the deals that you're looking for are going to match up exactly with what they want. That way it's going to be a very easy fit when the time comes that you need to raise the money. All right, so that's the deal about being a syndicator. You see how essentially what we're doing here, if you think about how we're operating our business, you're acting really a lot like a broker of deals, taking the money on one side and the deal on the other, or the information on one side and the buyer on the other, and you're just matching them together. Now, the final type of investor is the owner-operator, the person that's going to hold that property in their portfolio. So when the broker calls you and asks you the question, what are you looking for? If you're the owner-operator, you're looking for deals that you want to keep in your portfolio. You should know what type of properties you want to own and operate. I can tell you, when I first started in this business, I wanted to own and operate everything, anything. If it was multifamily, I wanted it. Now, 10 years later, having learned an awful lot of lessons, I know exactly what type of properties I want, and I won't even look at anything but those types of properties. And you're going to find out exactly what I mean in my elevator speech, because when I describe to the broker what I'm looking for, it's from years and years of experience. And it's really going to benefit you in just a moment. Okay, so let's start planning out your elevator speech based upon the different types of properties that are out there. Now, I may be getting into some avenues here that are very remedial for some of you. That's fine. I'm going to give you my personal lowdown on all of this information. I think it's going to be beneficial. So if you think I'm getting a little too elementary, hang tight. I guarantee you will learn an awful lot from this lesson. So properties are described by letter grades, but not just the properties, the markets as well as the people are described by letter grades. We call them A, B, C, and D. Now, what distinguishes each property from the letter grade is really one thing, and that's time. An A property becomes a B property really by the passage of nothing more than time. B's become C's and C's become D's the older they get. Rich money, new money, wants to live in a nice new place. They're willing to pay more for that. That's why A-class properties get the higher rents. D-class properties are war zones. They're bad areas. Everything is falling apart on them. Section 8 won't even rent there. Those are D-class properties. They're 40, 50 years old. But 40 or 50 years ago, they were the A-class properties. So the thing that makes properties different on the letter grade really is time. Now, here's a tip. When the broker calls you up and you want a particular type of property, never say this to the broker. Well, I'm looking for a C-class property in a B area, or I'm looking for a B-class property in an A area. If you say that to a broker, he will see a fool coming a mile away. Because especially if you're looking in a marketplace that you've never been in before, let's say you live in Seattle and you're looking in Texas, and you say to the broker, I'm looking for a C and a B. Well, guess what? He knows you don't know what areas are Bs and what areas are Cs. So he's just going to tell you what you want to hear. Oh, I got just the deal for you. This one is a C-class property in a B area. How do you know it's a B area? You've never been there. And besides that, when he hears you say that, first off, everybody is looking for that type of deal, because most of the people they're dealing with are guys that just got out of someone's boot camp and they heard that that's what you're supposed to say. And I'm here to tell you right now, raise your game. Don't sound like these boot camp attendees. Say the things that professionals say. Professionals don't run out and say, I want a C and a B or a B and an A. It doesn't work that way. If you know the marketplace, which is what you need to do to be a professional, you will know right away whether it truly is a C in a B or a B in an A. So don't let the broker dictate that to you. Brokers will lie. And that's where they're going to start to lie to you first off. All right? So never catch yourself saying that to a broker. That's the first thing you don't want to say to a broker. You know, there happens to be a particular web page, a website called Pierce Island. I think that the web address is www.pi-ei. Peter Ichabod-Echo Ichabod.com. Pierce Island. This is a great website for getting some fantastic market information about multifamily properties. And the nice thing about Pierce Island is that they use a very objective standard for categorizing properties based upon a letter grade. I think they use like 27 different factors, right down to how far the property is away from a highway. Very, very objective standards. So when you see Pierce Island rank a property, whether it's the property type or quality or the market quality, it's done by a very objective standard. Brokers tend not to use that type of objectivity. They'll be very subjective in their discerning of whether the property is a B or a C or an A or what have you. So I would recommend that you check out that web page and find out exactly what it takes in order to figure out whether it is truly a C-class property or a B-class property. Use objective standards. There's no reason why you shouldn't. Become very, very organized in your decision making as far as properties go. Now, A-class properties are the top of the spectrum. They're typically owned by institutional grade investors, insurance companies, REITs. Many times these properties have been built and have never been sold on the marketplace before. The institutional grade investor are the ones that built it. Now, they command the top dollar when it comes to rent, and obviously when they get the top dollar for rent, they're the highest valued property. Now, these are the types of properties that you would want to live in. They come with fantastic amenities. They come with pools, tennis courts, fitness centers, beautiful separate offices that you can have a nice leasing office in. They're really beautiful, beautiful properties. Now, many times these properties have never been on the market before. And what happens is as they get older, the investment strategy of the REITs or the insurance companies are such that they have to unload them. When they start to get too old, it may not qualify any longer for the investment standards of that REIT, and the REIT has to sell that property. I've seen this so many times. There was one that we just dealt with down in Atlanta, where there were 19 properties that a REIT was selling. They had never been on the market before. They were beautiful properties. But the problem with them was that the REIT was trying to maximize their profits on them. Well, that's fine. They're entitled to do that. But the way that they do that is they don't set a price. They let the market determine the price. So in that particular case, if you are a new investor, you're competing against some apartment owners who are very stable, who are very experienced, and they have a lot of cash behind them, and they're willing to get aggressive on buying this beautiful property that has never been sold before. So they step in and they buy, they can write checks, they put up crazy earnest money deposits, and they are able to perform in a way that a new investor can't. So many of these properties coming out of the REITs, those A-class properties that are being sold, are now becoming B-class properties. Many of them are just not an opportunity for a new investor. So keep that in mind when you see some of these properties that say TBD, the market, the price to be determined. That might not be a great prospect for you to go after. Hey, give it a shot. Throw an offer out there. Making an offer never hurt anybody. But just be understanding that this may not be the best way for you to get your first deal done. And that's the key here. Now, the next type of property are B-class properties. I love B-class properties. I think B-class properties are the ones that new investors should all be going for. They're typically built in the 1980s or newer. Their quality of construction is so much better. One of the things that will really distinguish a B-class property from a C-class property is that the B-class properties are individually metered. That means that it's most likely that the tenants are paying for their own utilities. And that makes a lot of sense, because just think about it here for a second. B-class properties that meet this criteria tend to have been built during the early 80s or mid-80s. What was going on during that time? During that time, we had the energy crisis, and utility expenses were going through the roof. Before that, 1970s construction property, you'd see chiller boiler systems where everybody is on one system. Everybody gets the same heat and AC, and the landlord paid for it. Well, the landlord was getting killed because of the energy crisis. As I always say, owning C-class property is like catching a falling knife. You have to buy it at just the right time, or you're going to get yourself cut. And that's the way it is with C-class property. It may be very, very beneficial in a particular marketplace because the market is taking off. You might want to jump on the bandwagon. But if you buy it at the wrong time, that's a tough property. So be very, very careful when you're analyzing the markets, when you're looking at C-class property, because if you don't buy it the right way, it's going to come back and bite you. Now, another thing about C-class property, as I mentioned before with B, I said it was tenant-paid utilities. With C, it's what we call all bills paid property. That means that the landlord is paying the utilities. All right? Now, a little test, and this is just, this is a little asterisk here. And this is what happens a lot of times. You may be looking at a property that is a tenant paid, you may be looking at a property that the units are individually metered, meaning every single unit has its own heat and hot water and electric bill, a gas bill and electric bill. That does not mean that it's a tenant paid property. Maybe in that particular property, the landlord, in order to fill the units, has to pay the utilities himself. If that's the case, then that's an all bills paid property, even though the units are individually metered. And don't think for a second that you as a new owner, as a value play, which we'll talk about more as we get into this video, As a value play, you're going to walk into that property and switch everything from all bills paid to tenant paid because they're individually metered. You have to look to see what the market will bear. If you're on a street with 50 other apartment buildings and every single one of them is all bills paid because that's what that clientele, that's what that market wants, you cannot walk in there on day one and say, we're going to switch over to be tenant paid. And now all the tenants are going to pay the utilities. You know what's going to happen? Overnight, all of your residents will move across the street to the other 50 buildings. Overnight. Don't do it. Understand what the market is in your area. So when you see a property that's all bills paid, that's tenant paid, that's individually metered, dig down deeper. Don't take that information at face value. All right, so that's my discussion on C-class property. Now, D-class property, all right, it's a war zone. It's what we tend to call non-performing assets. You're not going to get a conventional loan. You have to get a bridge loan for this one. You have to get a hard money loan for this deal. It's a tough deal. I called it non-performing. We can also call it non-cap rate. It's a non-cap rate sale. Now, what exactly does that mean? And I know this is only the second lesson, and we're going to get into the financials of these properties in the next 2 lessons. But the most important equation that you can have in the multifamily business is the holy trinity, as I call the holy trinity: the cap rate, the purchase price, and the net operating income. Net operating income divided by the purchase price equals the cap rate. If the net operating income is 0, that means your cap rate is 0. That means you have a non-cap rate sale. There's no operating income. This thing is losing money every month. That's a D-class property. Now, why do you want a D-class property? I don't know. But some people do. Now, here's the thing. With a D-class property, don't even try to do a financial analysis. The reason why you'd be looking at a D-class property is really to do the rehab. Now, if you're a rehab guy and you can wear a tool belt and you know how to get in there and fix these types of things, hey, there is huge money in rehabbing D-class property, but only if you buy the property the right way. So don't just go running off thinking, I'm looking for D-class properties, I'm going to make a huge hit. There's a lot of moving parts even to those non-cap rate sales. But in this discussion and what we're talking about, D-class properties are going to be the toughest, right? So my advice is be wary. Fools rush in where wise men fear to go. And that's the case with D-class property. Okay, now up to this point, all of my descriptions of A through D class property has to do with the physical presence of the building. In addition to the calculations of the quality of the asset, you also have to take into consideration what the market area is, as well as the clientele. So the market area is also rated on an A, B, C, and D level, whereas the clientele is also ranked the same way. So when we talk about an A-class property, a B-class property, you've got to understand, are they talking about the physical makeup of the property? Are they talking about the area that the property is in? Are they talking about the type of clientele that inhabits that building? All right, so these are the things that you need. It's a very holistic approach to understanding the quality of the business that you are buying. Because not only are you buying the factory, you're also buying the location of the factory as well as the customers that do business with that factory. You have to take into consideration all of these things when you're determining what type of asset you're looking to acquire. You have to take into consideration all of these things as we sit here and try to craft your elevator speech. So let's take a look at what is an A-class property like. So before we start getting into the granular look of the geographic location of the different markets, let's look at it from a more macro level. There are 3 terms that we use when we're talking about a particular market. First is it's a primary market. Next is it's a secondary market. And the third, it's a tertiary market. Now, what difference does that make? The real difference is in your investors' dollars, okay? When you're looking at a primary market, you're in competition with those institutional grade investors. Those are the people that only will buy in primary markets. They'll only do business in those areas, and they won't look anywhere else. I know I was talking to one particular client who was getting foreign money, money in from China. And Chinese people that she was telling me said that they didn't care about the type of property. All they cared was that they were buying in a primary market. San Francisco, New York, Miami, Los Angeles. They wanted to have their dollars in a primary market. That's typically what you're going to see with institutional grade investors. Now, the next level is the secondary market. Now, this is where it gets a little bit better. These are markets that are outside of the primary markets. They're great places to invest, typically between a half an hour to an hour outside of those primary markets. And there's still a good deal of investor dollars flooding into those places looking for good deals. It's a great place to buy property. The final place are the tertiary markets. Those are the places outside. Those are the places in the boondocks. You'd be amazed at how many people will look at a particular deal, think they found a great deal, and then can't fund it because a lot of those investor dollars will not go into a tertiary market. Tertiary markets tend to be very stable, very staid. You're not going to see huge fluctuations. You know, those are the type of markets where the people are born, raised, and die in those areas, like Mayberry RFD. I mean, nobody else goes in there. Those are tough markets to invest in. So understand that when you're talking to your investors as a syndicator as to where they want their money to go. You know, so if you tell them, hey, I'm looking for deals in Detroit, well, Detroit's not a primary market anymore. So they're not going to be too excited about Detroit. But it's a great property. It's a B-class property. Well, who cares? It's Detroit. So you got to understand what the market is that you're buying these properties in and what that means to the investors. So we're going to take into consideration the property as well as the physical market that the property is located in. Now, here's the real rub. And this is where I separate myself from other teachers when it comes to understanding emerging markets. All right? Here's the way I want you to look at it. You are building a business. This business is going to be the vehicle that takes you to your goals and your dreams and your big boat and your second home and the nice lifestyle that you want to live. This is the business that we are going to be building. So I'm going to ask you this tough question, but put this question on your heart and think about it if you don't have the right answer right now. Where do you see yourself physically 5 years from now? Where do you want to be running that business? Because even if your business is here in Boston, but you're looking at deals in Dallas-Fort Worth, you're going to be traveling back and forth between those two locations and spending an awful lot of time on planes and an awful lot of time in hotels and an awful lot of time at car rental desks. That's just the way it is. Think about if that's the type of life you want to lead. And there's no reason why you can't find deals in your own backyard. You may think that a prophet is only a prophet is never realized in his own hometown. Well, let me tell you something. All of the heroes that I had growing up were real estate guys. They were the richest men in town. They owned, one guy who was a hero of mine was the richest man in New Hampshire. And he did all his business right in New Hampshire. He didn't go to Dallas-Fort Worth to try to find some emerging market. He did it right in New Hampshire. There's no reason why you can't do business in your own backyard. So always ask yourself that question: where do I want my business to be 5 years from now? And that will help you determine what markets you should be looking for. So we talked about the quality of the property. We talked about the quality of the market. Now let's talk about the quality of the resident or the quality of the customer. Now, when you're dealing with A-class property, that's the top of the food chain. Those people pay their bills on time. They are very concerned about their credit rating. They are, typically transitional. Some of them are just living in your place while they, build a home or something to that effect. So you're starting to see some people that are good quality residents, but tend not to stay with you all that long, and they leave the units in great shape. Now, when you're owning property and you're running that business and you get down to the line on the income and expense statement for bad debt, A-class property has a line for collection of the bad debts. It's a form of income. The only properties that I've ever been able to collect bad debts from are my A-class properties, because the residents are concerned about their credit rating. So they don't want you reporting them to credit bureaus. So they pay their bills. It's amazing. I was shocked. One time I got a check for $3,000 from a resident that no longer lived there. I thought, I'm never going to see that money. And it's the only time I've ever been able to collect bad debt from a resident, is because they went out there and paid their bills. They didn't want me to hit their credit rating. So that's typically what you're going to see with A-class residents. Now with B-class residents, think about who B-class residents are. They're your recent college graduates. They're your newlyweds. They're the families just starting out, trying to save money to buy a house. That's a good clientele. They pay their bills. They're out there every week and every day earning a living. They're good people. They take care of the place. So B-class residents are great customers to have. Now, C-class residents are a tough clientele. There's typically, they're on government assistance. There's high crime in that particular marketplace. If they fall behind on their rent, they move. You try to go work out some type of a payment arrangement, they don't want to have it. If we go across the street, we start fresh. So that's some of the things that you see with C-class residents. There's no elasticity in their income. So if you were to look at a C-class property and you think, I just need to go up on the rent by $20 a month and blah, 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 listen, C-class residents, if you go up $20 on their rent, that's huge money to them. They will move to the guy across the street because he won't go up on their rent. So there's very little elasticity in the rent for C-class properties. If you're looking at a property and you see that the loss to lease category, and we're going to get into this when we go through the financial accounting package, if there's a big spread in that loss to lease, don't think that that's a huge value play for you on a C-class property. Chances are very good that you're not going to get that increased income because these people will move out. So just be very careful in understanding that when you're dealing with these types of residents, this is what you get. And I'm telling you folks, it doesn't matter where you are. These things that I'm telling you are essentially golden rules. They're the same everywhere you go. It's just the makeup of this business. So A residents, primo, they pay their bills. B residents, very good. You're going to get some that fall behind. You're going to get some that you have to evict. That's just the nature of the business. C-class residents, you need a strong backbone. That's why I have that bumper sticker that says life is too short to own C-class property. I'm not looking for that anymore. Younger people that this is what they do for a living full time, that might be perfect for them. But for me, I'm not interested. Okay, so those are the three things you need to take into consideration when you're looking at a property. The letter grade for the market, the property, and the clientele. And they don't all have to be the same letter grade. We've seen that so many times. Now, here's where it's going to get fun. Here's where I'm going to start to describe for you my elevator speech. And I'm going to tell you right now, and some people take this down verbatim, and I wish they didn't, because when you do that, you're going to sound like everybody else. You've got to learn this business and create the elevator speech that's right for you, okay? So here's my elevator speech and here's how it goes. Okay, so the first thing that I don't say is I don't even talk letter grade, believe it or not. Here I just went through this whole explanation of whether it's A, B, C, or D. When I speak to the broker, he calls me up and he says, what are you looking for? I don't tell him a letter grade. What I tell him is I'm looking for property that was built in the 80s or newer. Now, why do I say that? Because that imputes a particular letter grade. That tells everybody that I'm looking for a B-class property. Now, when I say a property that was built in the 80s, that really goes to the quality of construction. I can honestly tell you, I've looked at thousands of apartments, thousands. And the properties that were built in the 70s versus the properties that were built in the 80s, it's like night and day. It's like a different planet. For some reason, the architects got the hang of it. It's like they sat down with the property owners and said, what costs you a lot of money to operate on these properties? Well, flat roofs, chiller boilers, single pane windows. And the architect said, great, we're not going to design those anymore. We're going to give you pitched roofs, separate entrances, individually metered, all the great things that make it easy to own a property. And that seems to have all come about in the 1980s. So when a broker asks me, what am I looking for? I say, I'm looking for property that was built in the 80s or newer. And right away, that translates into a B-class property. Then once I have that explained to him, the next thing I say is the type of construction that I'm looking for. Now, this is important to me as an owner-operator. What's important to you is something that you need to determine on your own. Whether you're a bird dogger looking for a particular type of deal for someone, or whether you're looking for, you're wholesaling a deal, or you're looking to syndicate a deal, you need to know what type of construction is going to be important to you. For me, here's what I say. I want pitched roofs. I remember when I first started in this business and it was flat roofs or pitched roofs, and the broker would ask me, does it matter to you? And my answer was, nah, doesn't matter to me. If it's flat and there's a hole, we'll just patch it up and move on. Let me tell you something, folks. I've owned flat roofs and I've owned pitched roofs. I will never own flat roofs again. I will always only own pitched roofs. And it also has to do with insurance claims as well for wind shear. With a pitched roof, you can get your roofs replaced through your insurance company because of wind shear damage. Flat roofs, you don't get that benefit. So I am strictly a pitched roof person. Separate entrances. I want everybody to walk into their unit, turn the key, and walk right in. I want them to walk up the stairways, and I can look through the hallways, I can look through the exterior hallways, and I can see who's hanging out there. No loitering, no gang activity, no violence. I want people to feel comfortable and safe when they walk up those steps, they walk right into their unit. Those are separate entrances. Now, the alternative are those types of buildings where there's a one main entrance, you go in, and there are hallways. Let me tell you something. Hallways bring about crime, vandalism, graffiti, trash. I have to pay more for cleaning. The carpets get destroyed. I don't want that headache. Separate entrances, I don't have that problem. Now, the other thing that I say to the broker is I want individually metered properties. Now, for those of you that are very new to this, let me explain to you what this means. This means that when you walk into the unit, there is typically a closet with a little furnace and a little hot water heater. And the gas and the electric are all metered through that one particular unit. That means when the resident rents that unit, they have to go to the utility company and get their utilities turned on in their name. And in the lease, it says it's their responsibility to pay that bill, or if they don't, they can be evicted. But right away, as the landlord, I don't have to worry about heating or cooling or giving hot water to that particular unit. It's the tenant's responsibility. That takes that particular line item right off my income and expense statement. It's beautiful. It's the only way that I want to own and operate property. Now, the alternative to that are those types of units, those types of buildings that have a central heater and a central cooler. Typically what they're called are chiller boilers. I've owned property with chiller boilers. I will never own chiller boiler units again, ever in my life. It's just not worth it. They're incredibly inefficient, they're incredibly expensive, and they're my responsibility. Now you'll hear this expression, oh, it's on a RUBS, or you can bill it back to the resident. And I'm here to tell you guys, it doesn't work that way, because if you're dealing with a chiller boiler unit, you are most likely dealing with a C-class property. And when you're dealing with a C-class property, you're dealing with a C-class resident. And a C-class resident is an all bills paid customer. They can't go to the utility company and get the utilities turned on in their name. They don't have the credit to do it. So it all comes back on you to heat and cool their particular unit, and it costs a fortune. So I have done it. I've owned chiller boilers. I will never do it again. Now, as I mentioned before, you might have heard me just use the expression RUBS, Ratio Utility Bill Back System. All right, now that's a company that will go in there and actually figure out exactly what each unit is charging or using for their utilities, and then bill it back to them. When that happens, you will get some income, some utility income from that resident. But if you look on the income and expense statement, and we will go through this in the next lesson, when you look at the income and expense statement, what you get back in the form of RUBS income is never enough to cover the utility expenses going out. So in that particular case, would you rather have a tenant paid utilities or a RUBS paid utilities? You always want to have a tenant paid property. That, at least I do. So when the broker is asking me what I'm looking for, that's exactly what I'm saying. Now, the final thing that I say to the broker is I'm looking for some type of property that has a management issue that I can get in there and fix. Well, let me tell you something, folks. Every property has a management issue that has something that needs to be fixed. And the broker typically laughs when I say that, but it's a conversation starter, it's an icebreaker, it's a way for him to start telling me what's going on in that particular property. That's why I say that. So when a broker calls me up, here's my elevator speech. I don't even have to read it, it's just committed to memory. I want 1980s construction or newer, pitched roofs, individually metered, separate entrances, and some type of a management issue that I can get in there and fix. Bam, I'm done. The guy knows that I know what I'm looking for. When he hears that, he knows that I know this business. I've got it committed to memory. And that's my elevator speech. From that point on, we talk about other things. So that's what you need to do, is you need to figure out, now watch the templates that are attached to this video. You're going to watch those templates, you're going to get those templates, and they're going to help you craft your message. Whether you're bird dogging, wholesaling, syndicating, or owning and operating, those templates are going to help you figure out exactly what type of asset you're looking for and how to say it to the broker when he asks that $1 million question, what are you looking for? You're going to come out sounding like a genius. That is my job, is to make you guys look good. All right, so we're going to get to that first deal. Now, let's go through, I just explained to you what I say, but notice the things that I didn't say. And I'm going to tell you the things that I don't want you ever to say to a broker, all right? First thing I didn't say was, I'm looking for a property with a value play. Oh my gosh, really? Oh, that's interesting. And whose boot camp did you attend? You sound like a novice. Everything's a value play. I mean, charging more for the water is a value play. Increasing the rents and reducing the loss to lease is a value play. Everything's a value play. So you get in there and you figure it out on your own. Don't say it to the broker. Don't have him bring to you what the value play is. You'll see it in his handout, in his offering memorandum. he'll say the value play for this property is X. All right, fine. I also never mentioned cap rate. Did you notice that? I never said what cap rate I was looking for. And a lot of times brokers will say, well, what type of cap rate are you looking for? You know what? Don't get into that game with the broker. Because first off, the reason why I never mention it is because I don't want to limit the deals that he sends me. If I say, well, I'm looking for a 7 cap, what if it's an 8 cap? Does that mean he's not going to send me that particular property, even though that property was a 1980s construction, pitched roof, separate entrances, individually metered, and some type of a management problem that I can get there and fix? I don't want to limit what he sends me. That type of property is what I'm looking for. Now, by saying that type of property in that particular marketplace, that implies a particular cap rate. So why limit myself by telling the broker what I want for a cap rate? And also, and this is another reason why you never want to get in the discussion of a cap rate. The cap rate, as we mentioned before, is a function of 2 other variables, the net operating income and the purchase price. Well, here's rule number 1 in this business. The biggest lie in multifamily is the purchase price or the asking price. If he asked for $1 million, you're not going to pay $1 million. You're only going to give him $750. And the NOI, the net operating income, is something that we need to go in there and confirm. So those 2 numbers are huge variables in and of themselves until I get in there and determine their true value. And when I do that, then the cap rate is able to be determined. So until that time, those 2 numbers mean nothing to me. So I don't even want to have a discussion with the broker about cap rate. The other thing I never want to have a discussion with the broker about is the cash-on-cash return. Well, what type of cash-on-cash return are you looking for in this particular transaction? None of your business. It's none of your business. The cash-on-cash return is a function of how good I am at negotiating the deal with the seller. If I'm able to negotiate seller financing, is that going to change my cash-on-cash return? Absolutely. But do we know that when I have the conversation with the broker on day 1? No. So I'm not even going to talk to the broker about cash-on-cash return. I had a client call me up the other day, and she and the broker were trying to figure out exactly why they couldn't come to terms on the price, because nothing was making sense. And so the broker finally said, well, what type of cash-on-cash return are your investors looking for? And she said, Charlie told me never to mention that. So she knew right away, if she ever mentioned that, it would be a losing proposition for her, and so she didn't. And that way, the broker was never able to come back and use that number against her. Bravo for my client. Another thing you never want to mention or never say is, I'm looking for no money down deals. Oh, just don't say it. Big mistake. What else do we not say? Seller financing, that comes later on in the discussion. When you decide that you want to make an offer on that property, you pick up the phone and you call the broker and say, listen, is the seller willing to get creative? I might need to get creative in order to get to the deal I'm looking for or that he's looking for. Is the seller willing to get creative? And just leave it at that. See what the broker comes back. The broker's probably going to say, well, make an offer. Let's take a look at it. So go ahead, make an offer with some type of seller financing built in. But, and I say this in all my other classes, never ask for a seller second mortgage. Never ask for the seller to take back a second mortgage. Just don't do it. You might be thinking to yourself, but wait a minute, how else can I do this? All you want to say is that the seller will provide financing to the tune of $100,000. All right? Now you might think to yourself, okay, but isn't the broker going to ask for some type of security on that? Well, maybe, but you're not going to do it in the form of a second mortgage. And I'll teach you how to do that and how to protect yourself going forward in future classes. But just make sure that you never put it down as a second mortgage. It's only going to come back and bite you. Don't always remain in control of the deal. It's one of the rules coming up. And one of the ways that you remain in control of the deal is you don't call it a second mortgage. Don't ever say that we want to make sure that this contract we're able to assign this contract. Virtually all contracts are assignable unless it specifically says that this contract cannot be assigned. And you don't want to even get into that argument with the seller. You just make sure that you can assign it. Every contract in this business has to be assigned. When I'm making the offer as Dobbin's Law. But Dobbin's Law is not going to buy that property. Some other entity that I create the day before we go to close is going to own that property. And the bank is going to want to see me assign it from Dobbin's Law to that other entity. And the only way I can do that is if the purchase and sale contract says I can assign it. If it doesn't say that I can assign it, I can't assign it. I have to buy it as Dobbin's Law. And I never want to put that company in that risk. So every contract should be assignable, but you don't raise that issue when you're making the offer, because the broker may think, wait a minute, is this guy a wholesaler? Is he just looking to get this deal in a contract and he's going to flip it to somebody else and now I got to deal with somebody else? Don't even put yourself in that position. Never mention assignment whatsoever. Now, another thing you never want to say to a broker is, I just attended a boot camp. Oy vey, for crying out loud, don't do it. When they hear that, they don't even want to deal with you after that point. Another thing you don't want to say is, I'm working with a coach. Oh, listen, my clients are trained to say my partner, my investor, I have a consultant that I deal with. Though that type of terminology is fine, but I always teach my students, don't call me a coach when you're dealing with a broker. Call me whatever, call my attorney. I'm not your attorney, but sometimes my clients let that slip out. And so that's the thing, is you just don't want to come across as being weak to these brokers. Don't tell them that you're a syndicator. We already went through this earlier. Just don't do it. Never say anything like, I've never done a deal before, or this will be my first deal, or I really have to get this deal done. Those types of terms you never want the broker to even hear. And then finally, and this one may sound strange, but I've heard this one said before, and you just got to protect yourself, make sure this doesn't happen. Don't ask the broker, do you know anyone else that may be interested in investing in this deal with me? It's not his responsibility to put together your investment team. And when he hears that, right away it means that you don't have your team together. And you don't want the broker to know that. You might want to know other investors that could do this deal, but you don't want the broker to know you need that information. So definitely just do not say those things that I just went through. Just remember, you have to appear able to perform. You may have never done this before, but that's fine. Everybody has to start out somehow. But when you're putting yourself out there and you're showing everybody your new business, you want to show your strength. And you want to show them that you have the ability to close. And that's what we're here for. We're here to help get you across the finish line. And so we will help you with all of those things, all of those hoops that you have to jump through in this business to get a deal done. But don't shoot yourself in the foot even before you get started off the starting line, because you say something to the broker that triggers weakness in his eyes. Just don't do it. Talk to us on the group coaching call. Send us an email at info@multifamilyinvestingacademy.com. We'll help you answer these questions. We'll help get you across that finish line. That's what we're here for. Okay, so let's start to bring it in for a landing here. Let's start to pull all the pieces together, and let's start to put together your elevator speech. Now, we're going to go through the templates. You can print off the templates and start to fill in the blanks so that when you speak to the broker, each one is going to be answered for you. Now, each particular template is talking about talking about who you are first, the bird dog or the wholesaler, the syndicator or the owner operator. Each one is going to be crafted differently so that you have to ask yourself the question, who am I in this particular relationship? The next thing you want to know that you want to talk to the broker about is say, I focus on, and then you tell him, I focus on B-class properties located in this particular marketplace. That's my focus, and that's my investor's my investor group's focus. That's what we do in this business. Another thing, when you get that broker on the phone, listen, you shouldn't be the only one being interrogated. Sometimes it should be you interrogating the broker. Hey, Mr. Broker, tell me a little bit more about yourself, and let him start to do all the talking. That's key, and that's very important that you do that. So make sure that you start to have that conversation with the broker. Don't be afraid to start to interrogate the broker, so to speak. Don't be afraid to say to him, what types of deals have you done so far this year? Big deals, small deals, where are you seeing the money come from? Are they from local banks? Are they from conduit lenders? Where are your buyers coming from? Are they all coming from California? Are they just writing checks? Is everything being done on a cash basis? Really start to ask him questions about what's going on in that marketplace. He can give you some fantastic information. Not all your market data is going to come from census.gov. Some of your best market information is going to come from the broker when he tells you what's going on in the marketplace. You definitely want to ask him these types of questions. And then finally wrap it up and say, listen, I'm really looking forward to working with you. You sound like a great guy or a great gal. And I'm going to take this property, I'm going to break it down. Is it okay if I call you back with more questions? Boom. Oh yeah, definitely call me back. We're starting to build that relationship. Okay, that's the key. You want to build a relationship with these brokers. If he gives you a property to look at it and call him back with it. Call him back and say, hey, listen, Bob, this thing's a dog. I mean, what's going on here? And, the guy will probably 9 times out of 10 agree with you. Yeah, I know it's a dog, but I got to sell it. The guy, that's what he gave me. He's like, oh, man, listen, this is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for 1980s construction, B-class, or 1980s construction or newer, pitched roofs, separate entrances, individually metered. You go through the whole repertoire again. And you say, listen, if you come across something else, that's what I'm looking for. But let me ask you something, Mr. Broker. Would it help you if I just tossed you an offer on this deal? I mean, would it build up your street cred? Would it build up your look with this particular seller if I gave you an offer, even if it was a lowball offer? Yeah, this guy doesn't think I'm, getting any leads. If you want to send him an offer, I'll present it. We'll see what happens. Okay, great. I will write you an offer. I'll send it on over. I'm not really that interested in this deal. It's not going to be an attractive offer, but I want to help you out. And right away, your stock skyrockets with that broker. Now he knows that you make offers. Next time a good deal comes down the street, who do you think is going to get a look at it? The man in the mirror. So don't be afraid to make offers. Build the relationship with that broker. That guy may have a dog of a deal today, but he may be giving you a sweetheart of a deal tomorrow. So build up the relationship. And that's how you do it. All right, so here's your homework. Now, last month, I gave you a ton of ways to find deals. If you haven't started doing that, or if you haven't even thought about finding a VA to go start finding those deals for you, get moving. Remember, if you're not making offers, this is nothing more than a very expensive hobby. So, go back and watch last week's lesson. Start to get brokers calling you by the tips that I gave you last week. And now this week, what I want you to do is speak. This month, what I want you to do is speak to 5 brokers. 5 brokers. Here's how it's going to go. You are going to make mistakes. You are going to sound stupid. You are going to be tripping over your tongue. But on the 6th broker, you're going to sound like a smooth talking salesman. You are going to know what to say. You are going to get all of that bad stuff out of your mouth, and you're going to get rid of the marbles, and you're going to speak much better than I'm doing right now. And you're going to speak very, very clearly with these brokers, and you're going to be a pro. So speak to 5 brokers, screw up 5 times, and then when you're done, you're in the business, start calling brokers every day, speak to a broker every single day, and start getting property packages in the door. You keep that up, within 90 days, you will have an accepted offer. So let's get started now working on that. All right? I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. It's been another long one. That's fine. You've got your marching orders. You know how to find these deals on the internet. You know how to start to build up relationships with the brokers. You now know what you need to say. You're going to have an elevator speech ready to go. There's no reason for when these guys start to call you, you can't start speaking to them immediately. Next lesson is going through the property packages, analyzing property packages, understanding what they say, understanding what they tell you, what they don't tell you, and really being able to break it down and know what's real and what's phony. All right? Listen, guys, this is the greatest business in the world to be in. I love it. I think you should be in it as well if that's what your heart desires, but let's do it the right way. That's the key here. That's what we're trying to teach you. So, see me on this. Remember, if you're an elite member, 2 phone calls coming up this month for the coaching, group coaching. If you're not an elite member, you can sign on anytime you want. You can start talking to me directly. And then also watch for the videos every week to keep you in this business a little bit every week. That's all we ask. And we'll talk to you later. Thanks, everybody. I'll talk to you soon.